welcome back to another brand new Motogp 24 video. Now today is probably one of my most anticipated videos for a lot of people. It is my controller calibration video for Motogp 24. Now over the last couple of years I have done this video and it's done extremely well. A lot of people have taken it and used it on role games. And essentially, if you are new and you don't know what controller calibration is, we have a calibration window in the games where you can slightly change the way the controller affects the bikes in game. I show you in this video basically how to make your own setup with your controller. You change where the bike handles on the brake, not really handles, but you're changing what your inputs do in game is essentially what you do, which then makes the game feel totally different. So it is a real cool way to be able to spice up the game. But we're going to basically go through it all. I'm going to give a very basic description of what everything means. I'm going to show you how you can adapt it to your own settings, and at the very end I'll show you my very own settings. So without further ado, let's jump into the settings. Just quickly guys, if you do enjoy today's video, if you wouldn't mind, let me know with either a like or a comment, and maybe even consider subscribing for future videos. Thanks, back to the video. Now here we are in time trial, and how you find it is inside the settings. You'll see up the top you'll see controls, and you'll see at the very end of this calibration. This is the calibration window, and in this little video here we're going to run through everything it is. Now you can see up top it says steering, it says accelerate, so that's your throttle. It'll say brake, front brake and reverse, and then it'll say rear brake, clutch and rider weight. So we've all these little settings. Each one will be basically the same, so you'll see inside each one we will have so ignore the cornering input modulation. I'll explain that in a minute, but for now we'll have a dead zone, we'll have linearity, saturation, filter pressure and filter release. Now we're going to give a quick little kind of description of each one of these is, and then we'll kind of run through how it actually affects the game. So first up is dead zone, and the basic definition of a dead zone. Your controller dead zone is the amount of motion that should be applied to the analog stick in order to detect a movement. Essentially as much as your controller will move before it'll actually move in game. Now for me, I've set it to 0 because this game has like a very built-in dead zone, it feels like to me. So personally the way I like to have it is as reactive as possible. Now if you have a controller that's more than 2 years old, you might want to add a small dead zone because there might be a bit of stick drift. On this game, if there's stick drift, you have an absolutely nuked controller in my eyes, because it's such a bad feature in this game already. You don't really want to be adding it, in my opinion. You can also press X or square if you are on the PS5 or 4 or whatever controller you're using. You can see how little the controller moves. I'll actually put my overlay on, so you can see now in the bottom corner how much my stick I can move without actually any dead zone. That just shows, and this is a pretty new controller, I'm moving the stick so much before anything happens, and that's just all implicates in game. So the way I've set my controller up is so that actually kind of the first movement is quicker, so kind of reverses what I've just showed you there. So we're going to move on to show you the next thing. So you can also press down on the right stick and it gives you a little description of each here. So we're actually going to read the linearity one because I'm not being able to find a very good one that puts into words. Change the linearity to achieve greater precision in the lower and upper part of the input. And that is, to be honest, a really good one. So you can see my graph changes. So what I've done by putting the linearity lower is that my very first initial movement of the stick, we'll get this sort of back up, my first initial movement is very aggressive, which means I don't have to move the stick that far before it'll get to like 40-50%, and then the last bit I have to move it a lot. So if you think of it, if I'm changing direction, as soon as I change this, it's already like putting a massive input because it knows I want to change direction. Whereas if I'm trying to get my knee fully down, I just want that last bit, I've so much control. You probably can see it in the control overlay how much control I have in that last quarter, you could say. But that's exactly what linearity is, and that's the most important thing in the steering for me. So next up is saturation. Changes to the saturation set which input value should match the maximum output. That sounds very technical. Essentially what it does is if you max out, so we'll go, what are we on, steering. I'm actually going to do this on throttle because I think it'll be a little bit easier to show off. When I go 200% saturation, then I'll show it in the calibration basically what it actually does. It'd be very easy to show it. Again, a lot of people will find this video easier with a representation in front of them, so we're going to go to the calibration. Now I changed the throttle, so watch how little throttle I've pressed. So my right stick is my throttle, you can see there on and off on the controller. Now the darker the controller, the less I'm pressing it, so it's completely off. Now it's fully white because I'm pressing down. Look how much I'm releasing it without the controller coming off in game. So essentially it changes the end point, it brings it up. So it'd be like having half throttle, so I'm only half throttle there and it's fully maxed out. Now you can't unfortunately go below it, so you can't, unlike other games, you can't have like a limit. For example, on GP bikes, my lean limit is set to like 98%, so I can't go to 100% lean. I can only go to like 98%. It just helps me in game. So we're going to just change that back to 100 just for now, because I will forget and wonder why I have a whiskey throttle in game. So next up and last two are filter pressure and release. Now they're very similar in what they do. Increase or decrease the delay applied to your input when the input is pressed. So when you filter pressure, it slows the input as you press it. So again, we're going to whack it fully up on the throttle and then show how much it kind of delays it. Release is the exact same thing. It just does it in the opposite way. So when you release it, how it slows it down. So I'm going to go to 100% again, and then I'll just show you here quickly. Just look how it's hard to kind of see it in game. If you do it yourself, you see it, but does a bit of a delay from my controller to what's happening on screen. And for example, if I'm not going to show you now because the video will rumble on. If I was to do it with the release, as soon as I release it, it'd be slower coming off. So they're not as important in my eyes, to be brutally honest. The last two, you can kind of put a bit of filter pressure on the brakes to make it more kind of smoother running, but overall I find these aren't the best ones for me. The best ones are linearity. Now I'm going to run through each of the other little tabs here we have and just kind of give it a quick little explanation of what they do. So first off, we have corner input modulation. Now if you have an enabled, managing corner will be smoother in the case of sudden change of directions, guaranteeing greater bike stability when entering and leaving bends. Essentially what it does, it's an in-game kind of assist that will just help your and kind of dampen out basically a lot of your aggressive movement. So if you really are aggressive on the stick, this might be something you want to run. Personally, for me, I like to have all the control because I actually found like the corner input modulation just adds a bit of, again, more of a delay, and it just feels heavy because it's kind of dampening out some of your weird movements. So if you are a little bit kind of questionable on the stick, you could say, overall it'll just kind of ruin some of the way you ride. So I don't recommend running it, but if you're struggling with kind of turning in and the bike kind of turning in too sharp and then you're picking it up and you're having weird crashes, maybe try this out because this could help. Next up, acceleration input modulation. Very similar. Enable or disable in the input. Enable acceleration will be more linear, guaranteeing greater bike stability. So basically it helps you accelerate, so it doesn't allow you to kind of go from really low RPM or low throttle input to massive. So it'll kind of just add as a kind of similar to the filter pressure for the throttle, different for the cornering, but for the throttle it's much more just kind of adds it on nice and slowly instead of leaving it too aggressive. So again, it kind of just overall helps. Now again, pretty much the same thing. Enable would be possible to brake, maintaining good control of the bike, reduce. So it's actually reading there, it's a bit like ABS. It'll kind of release and control the brake if the bike is dancing around. So again, I wouldn't really personally want that. You want all the brake pressure. Again, on the rear brake, it's going to be the same. The clutch and rider weight, these are different because they don't have it because you don't really use it. But we're now going to quickly go through my settings because I have a few little tweaks done. So dead zone perfectly is normal 0 for me. Again, unless you have a really clapped out controller like I mentioned in the start, you don't need it. 65% is a sweet spot for linearity for me. It just means that my very first turning in or change direction is a bit quicker and just speeds up my input, makes it feel like the game is a bit faster and a bit more responsive. Saturation, that is something maybe you could change, but it might feel like if you change the saturation, if you be kind of at that lean, you'd be fully leaning over, so it would change maybe how fast it changes. Now again, that could be something you play with. I do recommend, of course, playing with all these yourself, because personally my settings here will work good for me, but they mightn't work for you. So this is why I kind of go through the game and try and give you as much information as possible so you can do this for yourself and become better on your own instead of trying to copy my settings and trying to ride like me and so on and so forth. Again, for this, you wouldn't really want to filter pressure and like that. It would not really be anything on the cornering modulation. You'd want that you have filter pressure already. So again, I really recommend leaving them at 0. On the throttle, again, I would definitely not have a dead zone because it'll just be giving you a dead zone on your throttle, so it'll delay your throttle. For me, I have the linearity really far up, which means I can get on the throttle and show you as I get on the throttle, it's nice and smooth, and it just smooths out my throttle, so maybe I can be a bit more maybe aggressive on the trigger and not get punished in game. The throttle isn't very sensitive in this game, I don't find, so it's not really an issue. If you feel you're struggling maybe to pull the trigger all the way in, or you feel like that sometimes you feel like you're always in but it's not in enough, you can increase your saturation maybe to 120, and that'll just bring the very tip top of the acceleration back a small bit in your controller. You can add a bit of filter pressure, I find, in this, and it'll give you a nice smooth throttle, but then it comes a point where is it faster to run without it and just be faster on your own. Definitely wouldn't recommend filter pressure. The only benefit I could see of having a high filter pressure, as soon as you release the throttle and you backshift, it just has a small bit of an input of throttle just to maybe unstick the rear and kind of just add a bit of stability under heavy braking with downshifts. That's the only reason I could see maybe. And again, that's something I'd recommend trying if it sounds like something you need. So in the front brake, we have a lot changed. So again, don't recommend any dead zone. The linearity for me, I've brought it down again so that just the very initial part of the braking is different, and to be fair, it changes the whole thing. Personally, if you go back to the explanation, listen to what I said, that you'll understand why I've done it. It just gives me a better feeling on the brake. I haven't changed saturation. I've added a small bit of filter pressure, which just allows me to brake again more aggressive on the controller, and the bike just doesn't react badly in the game. And no filter release. The rear brake, funnily enough, this is the first one I filter released. In my eyes, like this, when I come off the rear brake, I like it to come off a bit smoother. So if I didn't really show you what this does, so I might as well just whack this up to 30%. And you can see it's probably not going to come across very well on YouTube, but just as I release the button, it takes longer for the bar to empty out, which overall just slows into the input. So if I had it up at 30, as soon as I get off the rear brake, it'll slowly come off it in game, whereas I have it down only 5%, so it really minorly changes. It's just for wheelies. In my head, if it just come off it slower, it'll just prevent the wheelie coming back. Clutch, you could actually definitely play with this. I've tried adding 25% release in my head to give like a smooth clutch release. I don't know if it works, to be brutally honest, but that's something I do want to play with in the future. But let me know yourselves if you have something different on the clutch for yourselves to get a good launch, because you can imagine, think of a clutch and wheel, if you like to release it nice and smoothly to get the best application, you don't want to just dump it and kind of get that grabby feeling. So maybe a bit of filter release is the way to go. Again, I wouldn't recommend any. You could have saturation. Again, might help, but the thing is, most people have the clutch on a button, which means it's on or off, so you can't really bring the saturation higher in my eyes. So that's a big thing, really. And in the rider weight, I have it turned off for most things. So again, you could argue that you could change the linearity, and hopefully he'll change direction a bit quicker. You could change the saturation as well to increase how kind of quick he does it, but for me, I don't think these are as important as the previous ones. But overall, I think that is pretty much everything I have covered in today's video. Now, if you have any questions, please drop it in the comments down below. I know there's usually a lot of questions. Sometimes I don't explain things too well. Sometimes people just don't explain it or don't understand, again, different languages and stuff. So again, feel free to drop questions in the comments and I will try my best to get back to you and hopefully explain it further if I didn't explain it in the right way in this one. And yeah, again, hope this helps. Again, let me know in the comments if you have things differently done, just to kind of explain why you've done it. Just I like seeing other people's kind of setups and ideas, because you can learn from everyone really on this game. It's really interesting. So yeah, I hope you have enjoyed. I really hope this helps everyone. So thank you all for watching the video. I should see you soon with another video. Thank you for all tuning in. I should see you soon. Thanks for watching. Bye bye. Slán go fóill.